Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of FaB, and this one is going to feature an interview. I'm going to talk to somebody I wanted to talk to on camera for a long time. I'm talking about Charles F. Rosenay, and thank you, Charles, for joining me here.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, we've been trying to get this going for a while, but things have always get in the way. But we're good now. Listen, Charles, you wear many hats, as I call it. You're involved in so many things, but I think I first heard of you as the publisher of A Good Day Sunshine,
Right.
the Beatles fan magazine. I still have a lot of those, in the white box in the closet,
Yeah.
and used to be religious reader of that, and what was that was a Beatles fan club magazine,
Yeah. Yeah. Like Beatle Fan Magazine, but
right?
a little looser, not as news. And then came out just almost 20 years and had a lot of fun with that in the 80s and 90s. It was a lot of hard work. But, it amazes me that people will come to me and say, "Oh, you're still in the Beatle business, Charles? I remember I used to get your magazine." And I go,
Hmm.
yeah, I haven't stopped. It's just I just stopped the magazine, but kept doing everything else.
And of course, it's been like 40 something years, right? More or less that you've been doing this, or
So the Beatle tours to Liverpool. This was my 40th anniversary. The magazine started in 80, so you can do the math. And I started doing the conventions when I was still in school in the late 70s. So yeah, I've been at it, and I've been in this Beatles biz, this Beatles world, this Beatles universe of ours, uh, in fandom for a long time.
yeah. And I'm always running into you at different conventions, whether they're music related conventions or toy conventions or horror movie conventions, because you're a horror fan like I am.
No, because we're both nerds and we love
Yeah, yes,
all the
proud,
same stuff,
proud geeks, proud geeks. And I mean, you do so much journalists, books. You got books, and of course what's the haunted stuff that you do, like the haunted horror attractions and stuff like that?
Yeah. So while I was doing the Beatle tours, that was for 40 years, 25 years ago, I started doing Dracula tours to Transylvania because it's my other passion.
Wow.
Baseball, growing up, it was baseball, monsters, and the Beatles, not necessarily in that order. And it stuck with me forever. And I'm blessed that I've been able to turn a lot of my hobbies into, sidelines, side hustles. And the Drac tour, I always wanted to do like haunted attractions. I used to love going into haunted houses, and I said, man, I could scare people better or the same way, whatever. And there was a big gap for a while in Connecticut. There was no indoor haunted attraction. So I opened up Connecticut's largest indoor haunted attraction, ran it for many years, finally sold it before COVID because I didn't think it would be able to, go on for that. And then last year started doing something called Haunted Trolley, where we take people aboard an actual antique, still running trolley, part of a trolley museum, and try to give them some ghostly adventures. So so much I do ghost tours to England and a lot of that stuff. It's just a kick, and the people who go on it are fans. They love the horror stuff, the ghostly stuff, the paranormal stuff, to the point that I also produce paranormal conventions in Connecticut and in Salem, Massachusetts. So there's the
Oh,
Beatles
yeah.
world, and then there's that spook world.
Yeah, and I know you're always doing so much stuff. I mean, all you got to do is scroll around on the phone, and I see all these Charles Rosenet things coming up. And I've always been meaning to ask you, like, how in the world do you have the stamina? How do you always manage to never? It doesn't seem like you tire. One thing before you answer that, I mean, today I typed you and I said, let's. I want to get to that interview we've talked about for so long. Whatever times are good for you, it would be fine. And I'm thinking he's going to tell me, oh, about 2 months from now or so. He goes, how about today? And I was like, huh? I can't believe he's free.
That's my thing. I don't want to put off. The only thing I want to put off is something that I'm promoting 6 months in advance, that I want to plan and get it down perfect and do all the correct proper steps to the to the promoting process. But if I can do an interview, whether it's me doing the interview or being the interviewer, interviewee, either way, yeah, why wait 3 weeks? Why wait 6 weeks? Let's do it, because I don't know how busy I'm going to get. I knew today I had a full day off because of a holiday. I'm looking
I
at
didn't
taking.
even realize that. Being retired, I forget every day's like a holiday to me,
Yeah,
so I
yeah.
forget.
But I mean, I'm looking at, tomorrow I've got 4 events. On Wednesday, I'm doing a book signing at a library, followed by an evening interview. On this weekend, I'm going to be a special guest at the Mid Atlantic Nostalgia Convention in Hunt Valley, Maryland. I'm going to be one of their guest authors, signing things along with all the, actors and celebrities. So I knew that today was probably the only time that I'm going to have for a while. All of September, I'm doing these library events for the Beatles, and all of October, I'm doing the library events for my horror book and my ghost book. So I filled in this calendar pretty well.
Wow, God bless you, as they say. It's amazing that you do all this stuff, and well, one of the things, the main thing I guess we're going to wind up talking about is your latest book. But before I do that, I want to show a book that came out in 2021. This is horror related here. The book of top 10 horror lists,
which
and
has which has 9 Beatle related chapters, I might add, and about 9 Monkeys related chapters. And it's not, it's more than a horror book. You could attest to that.
yeah, and I want to talk about the monkeys a little bit after all this Beatles stuff too. Yeah, so I thought what I would do is maybe have you back in October, whenever you can find a moment, anytime, and for closer to the Halloween season, and
Yeah.
we could maybe talk about this on my movie channel
Oh, I'd
that
love
I
to.
have. But the latest book that you have is the book of top 10 Beatles lists.
Hold
So
them,
this was
hold them up together, because it looks great side by side. With the horror book, we used all the classic monsters as the frame. And of course, with the Beatles book, I wanted to go with a similar layout, tweaked it somewhat, but it's all artwork by Shannon. And I just lost your image. All I see is listen to this channel.
and there it is.
Oh,
Ta-da! Keeping you on your toes. Yeah, yeah. Same
so
kind of
so
scheme
similar layout, but
layout.
only because when if I'm sitting at a convention table, they look good next to each other.
This is weird that this keeps happening. This has never happened before, but sometimes when you go live, this is what
No,
happens.
it's the spooky paranormal,
Go.
influences that make that happen. I get it.
No, let's see how we do. Okay, we'll try to do this. All right. Well, with the book, um, the thing is, you wound up talking to 64, I think it is,
Yeah.
celebrities and Beatles associates, as we say,
Yeah.
and they reveal their top 10 favorite things like Beatles songs, favorite Beatles albums, some cases, like in the case of Pete Best, a top 10 favorite Beatles memories.
Mm,
Pete Best talked about. But did he
great.
not want to do songs? Did you ask him, do you have any favorite Beatles songs? I wonder.
Well, so if it was up to me, I would have had nobody do Beatles songs. That's the easy
Uh,
way out.
uh,
Anyone can just do a list of Beatles songs, because you rack them off and then you give a reason why. And we should make your viewers, your listeners know that it's not just lists. Everything needed a reason why. If someone picked, a day in the life, they had to give the reason why they picked it. If they picked their favorite memory, what that memory was. To have just done lists would have been boring. But I gave them carte blanche. I said, be creative, think out of the box. It doesn't have to be just your favorite Beatles songs or Beatles albums. Let it be your favorite anything that they wanted to. So when someone like Pete Best, or was it Angie McCartney or Ruth McCartney, their favorite memories, their favorite places in Liverpool, anything like that. Elliot Easton from the Cars did his favorite middle eights in Beatles songs,
oh,
the
that's great.
bridges.
Yeah.
Larry Kane did his favorite and the most memorable concerts that he was at. So I wanted that. That made it far more interesting to me.
Yeah.
Um,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
but they had their options, and it was 3 different segments. A third of it is Beatle people, the Pete Best's, John Lennon's sister, people really connected to the Beatles world. And then the other third was just rock and rollers, members of the Vanilla Fudge or Gary Puckett or Ron Dante from the Archies. You're not really a Beatles connection, but music people. And then the other third was celebrities who weren't even musically involved, actors and actresses and authors and athletes, Dave Winfield, former Yankee, those kind of things.
You got
So
Mackenzie Phillips, kind of from a
Mackenzie
dad.
Phillips, yeah, she fits in all three categories, right?
Yeah, yeah, right.
She had a
Fits.
Beatles connection, which you know about in the book. She was on TV shows and acted forever, and also was, the daughter and was in the Mamas and the Papas for a while.
Mhm. And was it stuff? Beatle people like Bill Harry is in here.
Yeah.
Mark Hudson.
Yes.
There's so many names in here, and it's just interesting to hear what people think. Larry Kane and so on. Tommy
Yeah.
James, and back to music. The music, non-Beatles really, but
Yeah.
music.
Tommy James, great.
Um, Out of all these people, I'm just wondering, were there any people in particular, one maybe or more, that were kind of like you were amazed that they actually
Gave me a list.
participated and gave you the
Yeah.
list?
Dick Cavett.
Yeah, he was the first.
He's the one that I'd been asking him to come to conventions. I'd been asking him to, throw me a video for this, for that. Any reason I asked him to be in the horror book with a top 10 list. And it was always, oh, I'm sorry, too busy. Sorry, I've got this to do, that to do. Always a reason. And I'm thinking, I got to get these people while they're still alive. And Dick Cavett to me he's, the cerebral guest host. And he was it was Johnny Carson and Letterman and all these great people, but he was the one who really was the one who thought out his questions. And Harrison loved him and Lennon loved him, and I really wanted him in the book. And you know what? He was the tough one, and I got him, and I was really proud of that. Larry Kane's chapter. I see Starman Brindley gives a nice
Yeah.
comment there. Very cool concept. There's a great list of names. We'd love to read Kane's favorite concerts. Larry Kane's list would be a book in itself. It's that good. And, he doesn't just list his top 10, but he lists all the reasons why those concerts were so different and so memorable. And, he had the fortune of being on those tours as a young American journalist. And then there was his counterpart. I think you know him, Joe, is Ivor Davis, who was the British version of that young guy on the tour, became friends with the Beatles, gave me a top 10 list, but also got to see the Beatles with Elvis when they visited Elvis. He was the sixth guy with Mal Evans. So he's in the book too. When I think of Larry, I think of Ivor. When I think of Ivor, I think of Larry.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
They go together. All right. So, by the way, anybody, I know we got like right now 43 people watching. If anybody has any questions or comments to make, please feel free to join in. And if I can put the questions or comments up there if you want. I appreciate the people that are here watching and
Uh-huh.
everything. Now this is backtracking a little bit, but I was going to ask you the basic kind of question: how did you get into all things Beatles? But basically you did say you turned it into like a career, something that you love. But basically, can you tell us how that came about?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a compliment to saying it's a career. I never saw it as a career. I think I'm a DJ. I do parties. I'm an MC. I've been doing that, since high school, and I think that's my career is entertaining. I think everything else is somehow, just this offshoot of the entertainment portfolio. But like so many others that are a little older than you, I saw the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show, and that changed me.
Mm,
People said, "Oh my God, I want to learn how to play guitar. I got to grow my hair out," and I wasn't musically inclined, unfortunately, or I'd probably have played, one of the guys in a Beatlemania band. But I did everything else I could. I started the magazine, I started the tours, I did conventions and now festivals, and it was all because of that, magical night, on February 9th on CBS with the Ed Sullivan Show that just changed my life forever.
it changed so many people's lives and put them in the direction that inspired them to play music, pick up guitars, do all kinds of things. I
Yeah.
mean, for me, I was not quite 2 years old yet, so I don't. I don't. If I saw that, I was propped up in front of it or something. But I know, my mom always tells me to this day how I got into the Beatles at the age of 3. 1965. Is really when I started. Then I started watching the Beatle cartoons. That's
Right,
how I got started with everything. But I don't. I didn't see Ed Sullivan, or if I did, I sure don't remember it. That's for
right,
sure.
right, right.
Just another comment from Starman. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about Bill Harry, who was one of the early, he was called, there were three cool catalysts, and he was one instead of three cool cats. Bill Harry, friend of the Beatles, Lennon buddy, probably was one of the guys who was instrumental in getting, the Beatles as well known as they were, and friend of Epstein's and getting Brian to go down to the cavern, all the above. And he's probably written more books on the subject than anyone else, but not in the past, 10 or so years. And I'm glad he's still with us. And thank God he gave me not only a great list, but he gave me a forward for the book. And then John Lennon's sister Julia gave me a forward. So I had to pick one to be the forward and one to be the afterward. And Bill Harry's been a friend for so, so long. And he's part of that, that mix of Alan Williams, who was their first manager, Bob Wooler, who was the Cavern DJ, Sam Leach, the early promoters, and they're all gone. And, Joe, had I done this book even 10 years ago, could have been
Right.
all these guys who are still with us.
Right.
So good thing is we did it now, and we got the people, some of the people who very important to the Beatles world for posterity reasons to be in the book, and so blessed to have Bill Harry's participation.
Yeah. One thing that stands out of my mind whenever I think of Bill Harry is I seem to remember an considerably older interview about him saying that he's the one. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's his story that he was sort of the one who got Harrison to start writing his own songs. He always to tell the story about. I used to keep on at him and on at him, saying, "Why is everything always Lennon and McCartney?" He says, "Right." He says, "You write some songs." I remember him like his voice saying this, and then he says one time he ran into George and he said, "Just so that you wouldn't bug me anymore, I made this song called 'Don't Bother Me.'" Uh, I don't know how much which is true or not, but I know that he said that, and there was also George tells the story. He was just sick in bed and stuff like that, and wrote it that way. But
I wouldn't be
yeah,
surprised. Bill's list of credits connected to the Beatles and their success is endless. So I wouldn't be surprised.
yeah, yep. Okay, let's see now. Okay, Charles, what are your top 10 list of favorite top 10 lists in your book?
Get the book,
You,
brother. It's in there.
wait a minute. Your top 10 list of favorite lists? Like you have? What does it mean?
Oh,
Like
I
your
see.
favorite lists, not
Not my
favorite.
top 10 list, but
Yeah.
my top 10 favorite lists that are in the book. Oh, I can't do that. No way. No
You
way.
don't want. Don't. You got to be careful
Then
here.
I alienate the other, 54. I can tell you what was fun is three or four of them um, wouldn't write it down. They wouldn't send it to me by email. They wouldn't send it to me by text. They wouldn't put it on a piece of paper and mail it to me. And I had a Zoom or a StreamYard interview them. And at first I was like, oh, really? But then when I did it, I was so glad I did it. Joey Molland was one of them from Badfinger. And the other one was Tommy Chong from Cheech and Chong,
Yeah. Yeah.
because there was no way I can get him to sit and write it. And it was one of those great conversations. The third one, someone you mentioned earlier, I believe, was Mark Hudson, who said, Charles, the only way I'm going to do this is if we meet in person and we have a cup of coffee and we go, and he talked forever. I mean, 3 hours. And then I had to, transcribe it onto a top 10 list, but his could have been a whole book. So I'm not going to say what my favorites are, but those were three of my favorite scenarios of getting the lists because those were in-person ones.
Interesting. Well, I was looking at. I'm not going to give these away either, but the final top tens, toppermost of the poppermost, the
Oh, yeah.
ones that kind of reference the most times, and for me, they don't surprise. There's very little surprises in here to me. Maybe one song, but
Doesn't it surprise you that there's no Mop Top songs? in that list? Now,
Yeah, well,
without giving it away, there's no "She Loves You"
we
or
get the
"All I."
closest we get is one. You know, we can work it out as the one I'll mention.
Yeah, that's middle. That's, I guess that's still mop top.
My
But
number
yeah,
one is a mop top song, and I usually can't name like number ones or top 10. I did do a video on my channel one time. I said, let me challenge myself, see if I could do a top 10, which is impossible. It
right,
changes any given day,
right.
you know. But I always go with "She Loves You" as my number one, because I like the early Beatles. You know, I mean, I love all the Beatles, but I guess I'm partial to the early ones, and you too,
I
right?
am.
And you know that to me, every time you hear that song, if even if it's on the radio, you come across it or something with the opening drum roll and everything, right away I'm like in heaven, and I'm on a roller coaster, and I feel all the excitement, the energy and immediacy of that song. I still feel it as if you know it was first came out in the '60s. It's very exciting still to me, that song, and it epitomizes the Beatlemania Beatles, the early Beatles,
Oh
everything they
my
were about.
God. My God, I couldn't agree with you more. When I was putting this book to bed, my editor said you have to do a top 10 list. And she made me do one in the horror book too. But I cheated. In the horror book, I did top 10 list of horror movie roles that I've been in, because I do a lot of acting. So that was my way of not having to come up with an actual list. In this one, what I did is top 10, Beatles songs or memories that are connected with my life. She Loves You is in that list, in my list, for not just the reasons you gave, but dude, that song, it's 3D. There's not a lot of songs that have their own life outside of the radio. And when you play that song, it's alive. I mean, you
Yeah.
described it, you said it so well. And I'm surprised that it wasn't on the top 10 list because it's certainly in my top 10 list, and it does. It just encapsulates, personifies Beatlemania and the energy and the excitement and the fun.
Yeah, exactly. I feel the same way about it. And you know, it's funny because in my, yes, I still have it somewhere in that closet, baby book. My mother kept a baby book, and she wrote down favorite songs, and she wrote down uh, she loves you, yeah, 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 and then in parentheses she writes 3 years, as if like, oh boy, 3 years, and then she writes a help or any Beatles song.
Wow,
So
I love it.
yeah. Let's see now. Hello, Patrick. Good to see you too. Hello, everybody here. Let's see. Yeah, another comment on "She Loves You." Very special energy and synergy. Yeah. The only thing about it, we could do a whole show on any any Beatles song. "She Loves You." That this is me always looking for a downer about it. Is that I forget where it was. Might have been on Past Masters One, where in the notes the first time I'd heard that they edited it was edited together. The final version is like three different takes, and I hear it all the time now. Now I hear it all the time, except if I listen to the Swan 45 and it's a
Uh-huh.
little scratchy, then I might not hear it. But if I'm going to
I've
listen to
always
it
see, but
on
I've,
CD,
I've always heard it, and I thought that was a charm to it. I mean, you can hear the fidelity and the cymbals change, but that was always I always loved hearing mistakes in songs, and that's not a mistake; it's an edit. But I mean, I think that was part of us growing up, and the magic of all those songs is the imperfections added to it. You didn't hear it when you were a kid, but as a student of the Beatles later on, it's a great addition. And you mentioned, the toppermost of the poppermost. I think that was an important part of the book because, somebody who loves, I don't know what, Hey Jude, they're going to have two things they can go to. They don't, without having to read every single chapter. If they want, they can go to that list and see, did it make the top 10? And then they can go to what's, I think, a real comprehensive index, which Janet Davis, my editor, did a great job on. And she lists which celebrity picked which song. And I think she did that. Michael Ventrella did the layout. I don't think he did that. But anyway, and so if you look at Hey Jude and you go to to that song, you can see, oh, so cousin Brucey picked it. Oh, Angie McCartney picked it. Oh, you can go through and see who picked it and see which songs match the ones you love the most. So that it gives the book a lot more depth, and a lot more reason to read it. I think people who read it love it, but I hope that that adds to the enjoyment of the book as well.
Mhm. Hello, Kit. By the way, Kit, Kit checking
I
in.
love Kit.
Good to see you here, Kit. And yeah, Penny Lane likes. She loves you as well. Yeah, Beatlemania vibe. My list. It might have stuff in there like "I'll Get You" on my list or something like that. I
Mhm.
don't know. It's so hard. I mean, "Let It Be" is one of the songs that's like typical. Everybody might put in their top 10. That might be in mine too. I think it is on most days. But for the most part, and "Strawberry Fields" and things like that, I'd probably stick "I Am the Walrus" in there. "I Saw Us Standing There" is in my top
You could
10.
go on forever.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I did one. I don't forget how I did it, but somehow I did it. And yeah, so "I Saw Her Standing There" belongs in there to me. But again, when I say belongs in there, it doesn't belong in anybody's list. It's what you like. It's individual. It's all
Yeah.
subjective. You know. Yeah, and of course there's the German version of "She Loves You." Sie liebt dich. I can never say that right.
Yeah.
Let's see. Well, anyway, I don't know. How about meeting the Beatles? I don't know if you met all of them, or I know Paul and Linda
I
for
met
sure.
everyone but John. The
Everyone but John.
first Beatle I met was Pete Best, and we became friends and have been
Right.
friends ever since. After that, well, I'm going to throw something in because in '86, when I met the Monkees, I thought this was it. Now I've met a Beatle and three of the Monkees. I'm not going to ever surpass that. But I got luckier, as years later. It's on the back of the book if you want to show a picture of me with Sir Paul. I got to meet him in Birmingham, England, at the NEC. That's where that was taken. And then got to meet him again in London at the Boardwalk restaurant, and a bunch of times, I, I I wish everyone in the world got to meet him at least once. I got to meet him a bunch of times, which I'm just beyond lucky about. And then Harrison was at an airport. We had gone to bring one of our tour groups, just like I do my Beatle tours, to Liverpool the year that he played Japan with Eric Clapton's band. We brought over a group of about 40 fans, and we met him at the airport, which was just total serendipitous and amazing. And then Ringo, I've talked to, on TV shows and at press conferences and all that. Never got a picture with George or Ringo, but tons of pictures with Paul and John. And then, kind of everybody connected to the Beatles who are still alive through the years. I've had the pleasure of meeting and becoming friends with so many of them.
Yeah.
So blessed.
That's so great. Now, of course, going into the Monkeys for a moment. How about Mike Nesmith? I think so, right? Didn't you meet all the
I
Monkeys?
did. I did. Nez was the last, and it was on. I think maybe his last solo tour. He had come to Connecticut, and tickets weren't selling as briskly as the theater wanted. So they asked if I could help promote it, and I said sure. And they go, well, we'll give you some free tickets as an exchange. And I go, I already have my tickets. I bought front row or whatever the VIP. They go, well, what how can we? I go, I'd like to meet him. And, oh, that's sold out. I go, okay, well, then I don't think we can promote it. And of course, they got me. We
Yeah.
did the trade, and I got to meet him. And I was first in line, fortunately. And I brought a drum head with me because they said only things that he had available could you sign, and it was only one item. And I brought it. I took a chance because I had it signed by Peter and Mickey already, and he signed it, which was amazing. And we hugged, and I was like, this was like hugging my uncle. I had never felt that way about him until I was sitting next to him or across from him, in front of him. And I think he changed. I mean, that wasn't what changed him, but that was kind of the time I think he got more receptive to fans and realized, his involvement with the fans and all that. Um, but I didn't get Davey on that drum head, Joe, because
Hmm.
I was closest to Davey. I saw him all the time. We talk on the phone. I'd meet him at different events, and I thought, no rush. I'll get to him eventually. And of course, he's the first one we lost.
I couldn't believe that. That's one of the times where you're just totally blindsided. I couldn't believe it at the time. And
Yeah,
it's
11
unfortunate.
years.
I wound up going to one of the chiller conventions in New Jersey, Chiller Theater, and I
Yep.
forget what year it was. It might have been 2009-ish, 2000. When did he pass?
He passed in 2012, and he was the convention 2 or 3 years before that
Yeah,
with
yeah.
his wife
And
Jessica.
I was at that convention, and I
Yeah,
remember like I got a lot of autographs, and I look back, and there he was talking to somebody in the middle of the floor, and I said, "He's busy." I said, "Next time."
right.
You never, and and I broke my own golden rule because not to be morbid, but I learned that with John. One of the biggest regrets of my life as a fan is that I had every opportunity to go and try to say hello to him or say thanks or for the music, in 1978, 79, in 80, and I just didn't do it. Back then I was in my teens. I mean, I wasn't really
Yeah,
used to going into Manhattan
I
a
understand.
lot, you know.
Same here. Same here. Yeah, I want to tell everyone who's viewing or listening, if you can see your heroes in concert, do it while they're still with us, whether it's McCartney or Mickey Dolenz or Ringo or Rod Stewart, whoever it is. Go.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's so great, like you said about Mike Nesmith again, how I'm so happy that he kind of appreciated it later and was willing to. I got to see him. I mean, I saw him. Uh, I guess it was the Monkees after Davy. I saw him, the three, Peter Tork and
Yeah.
uh, Mickey Dolenz and Mike. But I also got to see Davy, earlier without Nez.
Sure.
So, you
Yeah.
know, I got to see them all at some point. And what I wanted to know also is now let's talk a little bit. We're getting into monkeys territory here. Right? The Collector's Call show, hosted by Lisa Welchel, and you were on there. And can you
How
talk
cool.
about that?
How cool is that?
Yeah, it was very cool.
So there's a gal in Connecticut who has a monkeys museum, and they try to find, collectors, whether they collect pinball or stamps or they collect puzzles or whatever they collect, and they found her as the monkeys collector. And it only made sense, being in Connecticut, that I came and was the monkeys expert to evaluate her collection. Now, mind you, I had never heard of the show before that.
Oh, really?
And yeah. So I said, sure. Does anyone watch this? Is this like, Joe Mayo, who 50 people are going to watch, or is it?
Hey,
I said 1,500. I said, in return. You never know, right? So
right.
I don't refuse stuff. I think that if you have 10 avid listeners, it could be equal to a 10,000 people who just turn it on and turn it off or have it on don't listen. And I treat every gig that way, Joe. If I'm DJing for 50 people, it's the same as 500. If I'm in a library with 20 people, it's the same as 200. So having said that, yeah, I'll take the show. Not realizing this, everyone who sees me, who knows me from the Beatles world and the horror world, so all of a sudden, I didn't know you're a monkeys guy too. Yeah, I've been producing monkey conventions since '82. Friends with the guys, very involved with the monkeys. Have a monkeys book coming out in 2 years. So yeah, very very involved, and that was just a special treat. And they loved the whole the whole final result, to the point that they said, "Who? What else are you an expert in? Can you do Queen? Can you do Zeppelin?" They wanted me to do all these shows. I said, "Nah, just Beatles, Monsters, Pinball, and the Monkeys," and they'd already done all the others. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, what about the jacket? What about
the
the
the,
Davy
the, the
Davy
Davy
Jones?
stage worn monkey shirt from
The
'87.
shirt. The shirt. I'm sorry. Yeah.
So I wore that yesterday at a Monkeys party, thrown by the gal who was on the show, and I wore it for the first time. I said I wasn't going to wear it till there was a convention, but I wore it for that. Maybe there'll be other opportunities to wear it, but it's in plastic. I want to just keep it safe and valuable.
Okay. Well, anyway, don't and believe me, by the time this becomes a video, you'll get over 1,000 views on it. So they'll know about your book after that. Just live in the holiday in the middle of the day, probably. Not that many people as usual,
It
but
wasn't it wasn't a slight. I was
no, that's okay. But I want you to know that there'll be a lot more views for you
Well,
there.
we'll see how it equates. We'll see how many book sales I get from this at
Yeah.
www.book-of-top-10-Beatles-list.com.
Yeah, make sure you give us all that stuff, all the information, and if you want to do that now,
We'll
I
do it
that
now, and we can
that
do it
would
at
be
the end.
Is it the end? I don't know. What else
No,
can
we
we
can
talk?
do it now and at the
And
end
at the end. Okay, we'll do
because
it
we're right in
now.
the middle.
Do it now. Do it now.
So
Let's do it.
if someone wants to join me on our Beatle tours to Liverpool, next year will be 41st year. Crazy. It's www.liverpooltours.com. The Dracula tours to Transylvania is www.dractours.com. The horror book, which you showed, the first horror book, the first book I did, is www.bookoftop10horrorlists.com, which is kind of the title of the book without the book of top 10 horrorlists.com. And the Beatles one is book of top 10 beatleslists.com. And I'm probably forgetting some other websites and places to go, but those are the main ones. Yeah, awesome.
There you go. You got one right there. Thanks, Starman. All right. Well, I'm trying to think. It looks like my questions wise, everything's covered. Is there anything else you could share with us? Maybe in the what do you got lined up? Do you have any more
What
books?
I put aside 3 hours for you, Joe. I'm hoping that.
Oh no, you did not. You didn't say. I asked him at the beginning, folks. It was like maybe an hour if we had.
So yeah, I know. He gives all my secrets away. Uh, what I've got coming up is a lot of convention appearances, festivals, Halloween stuff. If you're on the East Coast, visit the Haunted Trolley. It's in East Haven, Connecticut. I've really fallen in love with this putting out books thing, and our friend Mark Arnold, who's done a lot of pop culture books, and I are putting out a book on the Turtles, which is coming out end of the year, and it's very exciting because it's a comprehensive discography book that people are going to really, if you love the Turtles, you're going to love the book. I'm one of these proponents of these bands that should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I know we can do a
The
whole show.
monkeys.
Monkeys number one, but the Turtles and the Raiders, come on,
Yeah.
those guys, you can't dispute their own, playing their own records, recording their own stuff. Anyway, I won't go on that tangent. And then ahead of that, after that, right, we got a Monkeys book coming out, which I'm not going to reveal exactly what it is, but it's something that's overdue and very special. And when I do these books, Joe, is I try to find a niche because I said I would never do a book because everything's been done. And then I get that brainstorm for something that hasn't been done. And the perfect example is the horror book and the Beatles book. There were never books like that where celebrities, gave their top 10 lists. I'm really proud of both of those. So the Monkeys will be not one of those top 10 list books, but something special in its own right. And then after that, a completely different Beatles book. So I'm going to save that. I'm not going to give it away, but it's
All
in
right.
the works now, and it's going to be so unlike any other Beatle book out there.
And Jeff wants to know, can I show the books? Yes, I will. As a matter of fact, let me do titles of the books. The first you got the book of top 10 horror lists and the book of top 10 Beatles lists. Okay, Charles F. Rosenay.
And
I mean,
they're both on Amazon. And the easiest way to get a book is through Amazon. And if you're an Amazon Prime, you don't pay postage. The difference is if you get it through my website, I can sign it, I can personalize it. I can write Dear Joe and his 50 watchers. I can do that. Oh, wow, look at that. That's quite an inscription. I did
look at
artwork
that. See,
too.
come on, they go up in value. These things, you know what I mean?
I think they're more valuable without my
I don't know if
inscription,
you
but
signed the other one. Yes, you did. There you go.
I did. I signed that one too.
Absolutely. Well, you can't see it that good. There it is.
Oh, and you got a peace symbol as well.
Yeah. Because
Nice.
I saw you in person. It's easy. I meet you at some of the shows,
Right.
so I get to see you, in the flesh, so to speak. Anybody else want to save me here? There you go. There's somebody.
On the Dracula tours, does it include a stay over in his castle? Not only does it include a stay over in the castle, but we visit all three castles connected to Dracula's legacy and Vlad's legacy. We go to Bran Castle where Vlad was imprisoned for supposedly 6 days. And that's the castle that when you see horror movies and you picture what would be Dracula's castle, that's what you see, Bran's castle in Brasov. And we go to Bucharest and we go to all the main places. The second castle is the one that was built to the specifications, where you go up the what is called the Transylvania Alps. You go up the way that Jonathan Harker went in the Dracula novel, and you go up the what's it called again? The Carpathian Mountains. Sorry, the
The
Carpathian Mountains,
Carpathian Mountains.
and you get to Dracula's castle, and that's there. And we also do the fortress, which is called Castle Penieri, and that's the one where Vlad actually lived. He protected his homeland, probably threw a wife or two off the edge, and those are the ruins. So yeah, we go to all the castles, not just the one.
Okay, and I forgot I was looking at these questions here. This here,
Oh,
3 members
oh,
of the Ivies, Badfinger.
great question. So we try to get as many of the living quarrymen as we could, and we got Rod Davis, and we got who else? I forgot. Len Gary, and we got Chaz Newby. And if you're a real diehard Beatles fan, you know that Chaz Newby was their first left-handed bassist. When they came back from Hamburg, of course, Stu Sutcliffe stayed back. They needed to fill enough members for a gig, and they brought in Chaz, who went on to play with the Quarrymen a lot. But you're not asking about them. You're asking about the Ivies and Badfinger. Now, definitely Joey, because Joey is Badfinger. He carries the torch. He is the remaining member, but is he really? Yes. There's also Rod Griffith. Yep, he was an original Ivy. He was replaced by Joey. But Joey wasn't in the band in the 70s and part of the 80s when they recorded an album called Head First when they did some touring. There was a guy by the name of Bob Jackson. And Bob Jackson was a member of Badfinger and carries on the Badfinger name in the UK. So whereas Joey is our Badfinger, and he's, as far as I'm concerned, the Badfinger, there's always Bob Jackson, who's also got the credibility. But there's one other person. You say 3 members. There's a 4th guy in there. And he happens to be the music director for Peter Asher. And his name is Jeffrey Allen Ross. If you go see Peter Asher live, or the Asher or the Peter and Jeremy, is it? Yeah, Peter and Jeremy concerts. The guy playing the piano, the guy who's the music director, is Jeffrey Allen Ross, and he toured with Badfinger also. So there's actually 4 of them in the book. And we did lose Chaz. I met
Yeah.
him last August at the unveiling of the Brian Epstein statue in Liverpool, right on Whitechapel. And it's really an amazing tribute to Brian Epstein. It's him walking as if he's walking out of his offices to Matthew Street. It's positioned so beautifully. And everyone who comes on my tour, we go there and we show you that. Chaz Newby and I met there. I had never, ever met him before. And I asked him for the list, and he said, "All right, give me a few weeks. I'm going on vacation. I'll do it." And he did it. And then we lost him a few months later. Hello, Jeff Allen. I did 2 Beatle cons in Michigan, I think 90 and 91. One year the guest was Pete Best. One year the guest was Mike McCartney, who never does conventions.
Yeah.
And I miss those shows. We did 2 Beatle cons in the Detroit area. Yes.
Yeah. I think I met Mike McCartney at one of them at the other convention, the fest, I think,
The fest, yeah.
but one time. But that was it that I remember.
Yeah, he
Uh,
and I hung out when I would come to Liverpool, and he had something to do in Liverpool. He was once at one of the conventions selling a lot of his stuff. Once he was at the Everyman Theater doing a concert of a reunion with him and the other Scaffold members. So it's Mike's a great guy, and whenever we do our tour, we also go to St. Barnabas Church, which is right at the corner of Penny Lane, where he was married. Paul was at the wedding, of course, and now there's a John Lennon, a new statue there, which I'd never seen before. They unveiled and we saw it this year for the first time.
Can you elaborate? Tell us more about the Liverpool Beatles tours. I mean, what's involved. I mean, I've seen so many photos that look tantalizing. At the EMI studios and the Mad Day Out locations you went to and all this kind of stuff. Can you tell us all about like stuff that people could look forward to?
Yeah, but Man Day Out, that was the first time we've done that.
Okay.
You think gone to London and Liverpool 40 times. Surely we've gone. There's some places that are on our checklist that we have to do every year and go to. Chiswick Park is one of them, where they filmed Rain and Paperback Writer, and we go there, and that's usually the first thing off the bus. And we'll do all the historic places in London that if you're not going to go to England ever again, we go to Big Ben and Westminster Abbey and Buckingham Palace and the Tower and all those places. But we'll go to Abbey Road, EMI, like you said. We go to Trident Studios in Twickenham, which are the other two London studios the Beatles recorded at. We'll go to 3 Savile Row, of course, the rooftop Apple sessions. But once in a while, we try to find that one little surprise place. And one year it was where McCartney did the Band on the Run photo shoot with
Oh,
Christopher
cool.
Lee and all those
Yeah.
great actors. And we all try to recreate that pose that was on the back of, was it Band on the Run, I think? And then we also tried to, this year, find all the places from Mad Day Out. And we found a bunch of them, including the water fountain, including the bench. And we did a terrible job, but we posed in the same places, not really capturing the Beatles look, but certainly, try to echoing that whole feeling. So we have someone to thank by the name of René van Harlem. And he's this Dutch guy who comes with us every year as the Beatles brain. He knows how to find the places that no one else knows and how to get us in there and a lot just the right time. So we get that. And then we also have time for other stuff. And the other place in London that we always try to get to is Marylebone, the train station, where in the beginning of A Hard Day's Night and the Beatles are running down that alleyway in George Falls.
I love that. Yeah.
That's the tiniest little alley right
Yeah.
next to the train station, and we we try to recapture and emulate the same thing with one guy falling down, and sure enough, he was all bruised, and it was like,
Ah,
oh man, you got to be a little more careful when you do that.
but it's worth it.
But it's like,
Yeah.
and that's just London, Joe. We only spent 3 days, London, 2 nights, and then Liverpool. It's a whole week of endless Strawberry Field and Penny Lane and the Casbah and the Cavern. You name it, we include it. And what we do differently than any other tours, we go inside them all. Tickets for the events are included. And people have the greatest time. 60 just got back a week ago. And it's letter after letter of this was the greatest tour I've ever been on. You go, I always say this, you go to your best restaurant and yet it has an off day. It might be the one platter was cold or it wasn't as fresh or delicious as when you were the week before. Year after year, we've been doing this tour going on 41 years, and people come back and it's 100% satisfaction. People have the greatest time. And I'd like to think that my personality and my energy and what I add to it gives it that one little difference that another tour might not. But it's the Beatles, it's the music, it's the places, and people just have the greatest time. And I have a great time. I know that's your next question is, Charles, you go 40 times, you get bored. I'm going to answer your question
How
before
did you
you.
know? No.
I have a great time through the people who get there. The ones who get off at the first time in Liverpool and they see the Liver building with the birds, and we're ready to take the ferry across the Mersey, and it's their first step in Liverpool, and they bow and they kiss the ground. Or I see them, going on the ferry across the Mersey, and some of them are crying because they never thought they would, have this bucket list thing they've said they would do their whole lives. John, I don't know if you're like me, but growing up, if there was an article in the Post or in the Daily News, because I grew up in New York, and it said these Liverpool ships are coming into the Liverpool dock, I cut that out and I put it in my Beatles scrapbook along with all the Beatles. Liverpool to me was the fifth Beatle. That was a dream place that I thought in my life I would never get to. And then, come 83, of course I did with fellow fans, and I've gone ever since. But it's still magical. and it's still everyone has to go.
Yeah.
You don't go with me. You should go with me.
Yeah.
But if you
Yes.
don't go with me, you gotta go at least once.
Yeah, and I've never been. I turned 60 last year. I thought maybe when I'm 60, but that didn't come to pass yet.
Yeah.
And I just keep thinking that I want to do it, and I have to do it. And every time that I do like a live streams, like Q&A thing where people talk about things on my channel or ask me questions, it's always somebody for all of these things. Have you ever been to Liverpool? Have you ever been to Abbey Road? Have you ever? No, not yet, but I want to. So
When you do, I will introduce you to so many people who will later be guests, and it's amazing how many people are still there. There was a time we went, and John Lennon's uncle Charlie would come to the convention and just hang out with fans, or Ringo's stepdad, Harry Graves, and they were just on the scene. It breaks my heart that we don't have them anymore because they would
mm,
just come and hang out. They weren't stars in their brain. They were just people who loved that fans were coming over to their town and celebrating the Beatles.
yeah,
And I cherish, the people who are still there, and Julia Baird, and it's the list is not as long as it used to be. Tony
no,
Bramwell, who's in the book, and we mentioned earlier Bill Harry, who doesn't come to the conventions at all, sadly. But I met up with Gordon Millings, who was Dougie Millings' son, the Beatles Taylor, and then the Debbie Greenberg, of course, whose dad, she was very much in the Cavern Club world. And there's still a lot of those people. Jackie Lomax's wife showed up at the convention, and these are just magical people who are, thank God, they're still with us and still there and come by. And then there's the new generation, and they're not kids, but it's people like David Bedford,
mhm,
who's an author who knows Liverpool as good, if not more than anybody else on the planet, and hosts our tour. And just you got to go. You got to go at least once in your life, and don't wait. Like we said earlier, don't wait to see your stars and your heroes in concert. Whether it's
right.
Bruce Springsteen, whoever it is. Don't wait to go to Liverpool. You know how many people, Joe? You know how many people say to me, "I wish I knew you were going to see George Harrison in Japan. I would have gone with you." I had 40 people
George
go.
Harrison in
For the
Japan.
people
Wow.
who tell, I would have had 4,000 people if everyone who said they wish they knew or they wish they went. So come to Liverpool with me or go on your own. Liverpooltours.com. I'm not going to guarantee you're going to have the greatest time of your life because you
Oh,
are going. I
I
don't
think
have.
I would.
I
I
don't have.
think I would. I think I would though. Have for first time anyway. Being there.
Yeah,
What do we
it's the
have here?
ultimate.
1983 was my first trip to Liverpool. I sat in a bar drinking with Charlie Lennon, both of us crying whilst In My Life was playing.
Wow. And Dino and I hung out. Oh, amazing. Dino and I hung out watching Gavin Prigg, the Harrison from FaB 4, followed by the Pure McCartney show at Grand Central this weekend. He's one of the great not just a great Beatle fan and a great guy, but one of the few guys who vends at the convention, sells memorabilia and records and all that cool stuff, and then attends all the events. He's a true fan. I'm so glad we hooked up and spent time together at the convention this year.
It is. Patrick's very kind here. We hope Charles can come back here in the future and Joe's other shows, and also other shows like Two Legs and the Paul McCartney podcast, Two Legs, and lots of shows out there. So
I would
many. I
be
would
honored.
ordinarily say so many shows, so little time, but with Charles, he does it all, so he can
I'll
be
do it.
everywhere and anywhere.
I'll
He's
fit it in. I don't sleep. There's 4 different Charles Rosenays, and each of us do the same things. So there's enough time for all of us to do it.
Is that what it is? Well, Charles, I think that's it for now. But I got to say, this has been so much fun for me. I knew it would be. You're a great guest to have on here, and you're so like lively and interested in everything you talk about and excited. You could tell it's a passion for you,
I'm,
and you.
I'm not. I'm not boring and laid back.
No, you're. I can see when I meet you at the conventions. Much fun you are. You're absolutely passionate about your subject, as I try to be too. I love it. Got to have some fun these days, and you've been doing
Absolutely.
this for 40 years plus.
Can I throw out the websites one more time?
Chat, please do.
So for the Beatle tours, it's liverpooltours.com. Come with me next year. We go every year for Beatle Week. So we go to London first and then spend a whole week in Liverpool. The DRAC tours is DRACTOURS, dractours.com. Yeah, the Beatle books, you got them ready to show. I see you're professionally handing them out. Book of Top 10 Horror Lists.com. There it is. Or book of Top 10 Beatles Lists.com. I give the, oh, look at that young, cute guy.
Yeah, the guy on the other side
Oh, yeah, you're
next
talking
to
about
Paul
me.
isn't bad either.
And of course, I give the websites because that's the best way to get me to send you a signed one. But you can get them on Amazon, and they're readily available. And Joe, I loved doing this show. I've done Beatle tours of New York in the past when I coincided them with concerts at Carnegie Hall, either Paul's oratorio or I can't remember what. Then we would do a Beatles New York tour in conjunction with that when 1964 played Carnegie Hall. But there's a gal named Sue who we both know. I think Sue Ryan
I
does
just
those.
saw the DVD, not for my first time. There was a
Yeah, yeah.
DVD.
So if you ever want to do a New York Beatles tour, get in touch with my friend Susan. She'll do those for you.
Susan Ryan. Thank you so much, Charles. It's a pleasure. Thank you for all the people who watched and who also, made some comments. And sorry for those of you who are going to be watching this on playback that missed it live. But we'll have Charles on again soon, I hope, or at least in October to talk about his horrorless book in more
I am
detail.
so looking forward to that. I love that you have the same passions that I
Oh,
do.
I do.
And if anyone, obviously they can't chat after the show, but they can always email me, liverpoolproductions@gmail.com, and I'll answer it anything they want. I'll always reply, liverpoolproductions@gmail.com.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Charles. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Joe.